My God is powerful. Look at his glory, the clouds in the sky, the trees outside, the air and the wind. You can't even see it, but if you don't breathe it, in minutes you die. My God is powerful. With his words, he separated the oceans. He birthed the entire universe, brought animals into existence. Scientists try to say atoms created Adam. He's probably in heaven laughing because he kicked up dust, blew, and it created man in his image. Can you imagine? My God is powerful. He put seeds in the ground that grow into plants that produce food for my nourishment. So if Miss Piggy gets sick, I don't got to worry about the bacon. Give me an apple from the tree, some flour from the wheat, then give it to my wife because she makes some good apple pie. My God is powerful. Before I came through my mother, he knew my name. Configured my face so we would look the same. Even put DNA in me so we would act the same. Even made me in his image so we would think the same. My God is powerful. But I'm a weak man. Such a weak man. I fall victim to the spirits, whether through the glass or through my soul. And the whisper of a foe will make my heart stir up with anger. Although he said my temper I should control. Sometimes I fall into rage and I just have to explode. I'm a weak man. I went up to a mountain for 40 days, got the commandments so I can better understand him. When I came back down, I seen a bunch of idiots running around worshiping the golden cow. I know that's foul, but somehow we still do that now. Because I go to work from 9 to 6 and I love the benefits and the perks, so I feed my family money and starve their soul by not forsaking the church. My God is powerful, but I'm a weak man. I cursed God and asked him why he put pain in my life. Why you put a child inside of me and had to let him die. Why you let my father abuse me until I was 9? Why you give me a husband that hate coming home in the afternoon but loves going out at night? Why did you birth me to a family that sold me into slavery? Why you grow me up in poverty and have me eating rice and beans? You say the issue is me, God. No, the issue is you. Why you always blaming me? I'm a weak man. But my God is powerful because he never cursed back. He opens his arms wide, wraps them around me, and lets me mourn. He said he loves it when I'm weak because that makes him strong. He knows there's something broken inside of me, so he made his glory bodily, came into this world as a weak man, befriended weak man, got on the cross and died so I can curse him, disobey him, and lie to him while his spirit is inside of me. Then he promised he'll never say bye to me. My God is powerful. The type of power that can speak through an earthquake but uses a still small wind. The type of power that can do it himself but uses weak little men. The type of power that takes her pain and uses it for her joy. The type of power that takes my brokenness and uses it for his glory. The type of power that spills his blood and uses it for my healing. The type of power that takes his death to bring me life. The type of power that calls his creation his best friend. The type of power that uses his angels to watch over me at night. The type of power that conquered death, conquered hell, took the keys of life. Hold up, let me remind you, let me tell you, if you haven't been listening, hear me. My God is powerful, and he's all I need. Thank you. So I'm out of breath, baby, so you're going to have to start that.
Well, I don't know if I can do anything compared to that. But good morning, Rock Harbor, Charlotte. My name is Vernita, and I'm the wife to this awesome guy, Ade. We are currently in the church planning residency at Rock Harbor, Charlotte, and we just wanted to take some time this morning just to share a little bit of our testimony and what God is calling us to do in this season in our life. So several years ago, we decided to begin our life with Christ. We grew up in the church, but then kind of, during life, just got away, just going and living life day by day. And recently got back in with Christ several years ago at a different ministry whenever his brother was just really just wanting us to go to church. We were not wanting to listen. He was like, you need to go to church. It's basically a big Bible thumper.
Yeah, he's like, you need to go to church or you're going to hell.
Right. And it worked.
Listening to my pop.
It worked. We decided to go to church. We started going and attended regularly. Our children were excited about going to this ministry, and which was surprising because when we grew up, we dreaded going to church in the morning on Sunday. So they were excited about it, and that made us excited. So we started going, and Ade started to serve, and life just began to transform. We went from doing life day by everything that was surrounding us had something to do with Christ. So we began to go every day. He started serving in the ministry. I decided to start serving, and then we got baptized together. And then God's hands was just upon our family. We went from, worshiping ourselves and trying to do things to ourselves, and then solely surrendering to God and having him do it for us. So life began and took off. I told Ade he should start a group. And he began with anyone could come to this group, and then he decided to start another men's group, and we started from one group one time a week to two groups 2 times a week. So everything we were doing was just totally surrounded by ministry. He was currently at the time working at CMS and owned a recording studio, because as you can see, he's hot on the mic. So that's where we thought we were going and our journey was going. And he went into his studio one day and his ceiling caved in. And, he was like, my ceiling caved in. I don't know what's going on. I'm going to get it fixed. So, well, at this time, I didn't know that he decided to pray a prayer asking God to take anything out of his life that wasn't of his will. So when he told me that, I'm like, oh, okay, maybe it's just the ceiling. It was raining. It was a heavy season. So they fixed it, and a week later, it fell in again. So I'm like, okay, no, you know how we are. I'm like, no, it's just a ceiling. So the next day, it fell in again. So we totally understood that he was talking to us.
I'm out of
and telling us to close the studio. So at this point, we decided to close the studio and be obedient to his word after so many different visions that he had given us that we didn't listen to. We finally closed it, and God just opened up his heart to lead our family into full-time ministry. He was like, I think I want to do full-time ministry. And just past May, he recently graduated with his degree in divinity. And clap for that.
So let me preface that. Before deciding we want to go into full-time ministry, so our surroundings was not a church surrounding. So I grew up on Adderall. So I grew up in the street. So I was my niece is in here. I ain't gonna talk about it. But I grew up in the streets, and so the surroundings that we had around us was from that same place. So when we started going to church, all of our friends, they changed, and then we started doing things differently. So since no one that we were around wasn't going to church, they're like, you guys are gonna be pastors, and you guys are gonna start a church and all that. So I never listened to it because I didn't believe it, because I was the only one reading my Bible, and they were still smoking trees and selling drugs. But so I never believed it until one day I was at school. It was like multiple confirmations after confirmations. One of the clearest ones, there was 2 very clear ones. One of the clearest ones that happened to me, I was at school, sitting at the lunch table. And I was a cafeteria manager, and I was sitting down with some of my coworkers, and we were listening to some old school gospel hymns, some clap your hands, stomp your feet, wade in the water gospel hymns, the type that's just so your grandma can walk around. We were listening to those type of gospel hymns. Some of y'all didn't get that. The white people like, oh my goodness, I just don't understand. But we were listening to some of those gospel hymns, and after that song, a song by Erica Campbell, if you know her, called "I Love God," came on, and everyone at the table, were seasoned Christians, and said, no, you can't worship to that song. It's too secular. You can't get with that song. Nah, you can't praise God with that song. And it was at that moment that it was like God's, one of the few times that I heard God audibly, is like he dropped into my heart and said, this is why so many people are leaving the church. We don't want to reach them where they are. And I want you to go out and do that. And I was like, who, me? And he was like, you. And I gave my year's notice at work, with not knowing what was going to come about from it, and just said, God is calling me, and I can't stay. And within that time, I gave my year's notice. I want to say this was July. In December, a guy introduced me to a young fellow that just moved down here named Thaddeus Finnick. I used to call him Finning. Named Thaddeus Finnick, and he talked about planting the church in Charlotte. And during that time, we were still with another ministry, and we were still very ingrained in it. And I gave him a southern no, and I was like, I think about it. And You know that Southern note, our hospitality. Bless your heart. But, told him, I think about it, and then God just started to work things out. My wife, she's usually the prophetic voice, and she was like, you just need to leave, and you need to go over there with daddies, and it's time for us to go. And I was like, okay, baby. Like,
I don't sound like that at all.
in my mind. And then God just shaped everything, and Allah gave us the opportunity to become part of Rock Harbor. And he started stirring up a vision in our hearts for a city, Washington, D.C. And he gave us the opportunity to go and visit Washington, D.C. We have 5 cities, but then God boiled it down to 2, Washington, D.C. and Charlotte. And then we went to go visit D.C. And the first day, tell them how you loved it so much.
I hated it. It's of course, me growing up in the South, there's no Southern hospitality, but and I told him that night, I'm like, hey, it's gonna take God to move me here. You talk to people and they're like, what do you want? And I'm like, okay, I'll just take a number. So no relationship, you don't build a rapport with people. It's like fast go, they don't look at you, pay attention to you. So I'm not used to that. So I was just letting him know that night as I was preparing my bags to go home the next day. I'm just like, it's really going to take God to move me here.
And what happened next day?
I loved it. We prayed about it, and I loved it. I mean, I was excited. I wanted it to move a lot faster than at the pace that we were moving at. But I know God just transformed my heart to realize, that he takes you out of uncomfortable places. He'll pull you and stretch you. I'm here right now. Thanks, Stephanie. So just taking you into uncomfortable places and making you lean on him more and just surrender all to him. And that was something that we were struggling with because we were holding on to certain things that we didn't want to let go of.
Yeah, and from that, she was sold on it. I wasn't sold yet. We came back to Charlotte, kept continuing to pray and fast. And one day I was in my car praying, Lord, will you please keep us here in Charlotte? There's so many people we can reach. We got family here. I was praying, and as I was praying this, there was a lady running past me with an I Love DC shirt on. And if it was an I Love New York, I would have been like, okay, it's normal. But I Love DC, I had never seen one of those before. So I was like, okay, God, it's your will. Confirmation. And this in that journey is crazy because God will give us these promptings. Like he would prompt me to go to seminary, and I literally went there, thought I was going to be a great volunteer. I was going to be a great small group leader. And then with that, I had my background's in food service management. I have a degree in food service management and culinary. And then he called me to go to seminary. I remember when I was doing the admission person was like, why do you want to do this? You're a bachelor's in food service management. And from there, I remember when I finished seminary, I started getting calls from different pastors. We're talking different pastors, and they would say things like, yeah, in D.C., we're just looking for a pastor that is well-educated, who has a immigrant background. My parents are from Africa, Congo to be exact, who has an immigrant background, and someone who loves food because it's a foodie town. And I was like, yeah, right. Like, this can't be possible.
Check.
But it just shows, like, the power of God, and to see how he's been faithful and how he is so powerful and sovereign that every step he orchestrates from 20 years ago, having Rock Harbor started church, to 19 years later, planning one in Charlotte, and then orchestrating me, a boy from Adderall who used to run the streets, to be here in Rock Harbor, to use my gift for music, to do spoken word, and to use that in preaching, and then use what he raised me up in to be an ideal candidate for where we're going. It just shows the power of God. And so now we're planning to plant a church in Washington, D.C. and launch around 2019, 2020. And it's a city that, even when last time we were up there, the pastor said it's covered with darkness because everyone is just pursuing money. But if you look at Paul's journey, a lot of time, the way he liked to spread the gospel and the way the gospel shifted nations was he went to major cities that had a lot of influence, and he shifted the culture. And we feel like we're called to reach people where they are so that Christ becomes the center of who they are, so that we may shift the culture. And that's why we are here, and that's where we are going. And Rock Harbor is a catalyst of that because they're sending us out to do those things, and that just shows the power of God.
When I started going to Rock Harbor, I was met with some overwhelming life circumstances. God took that and just brought beauty out of ashes.
So I've been a Christian just a short time, and it was one of my first few times coming to Rock Harbor, and I went into the senior center, entered into the foyer, and I make eye contact with a guy that I went to high school with. He sees me and he literally starts to beeline his way over to me, and he looks at me and he says, "Justin, what are you doing here?" And I said, "Louis, I'm a Christian. It's Sunday. I'm going to church." And he says, "You're a Christian?" And I kind of laughed and said, "Yes." Tears start coming down his eyes. And he says, "Our junior year in high school, I was at a service, and our pastor challenged us to pray for the last person on earth that we ever thought would be a Christian." And he opened his Bible, and there was my name and the date from that day, our junior year in high school. You know, God's brand statement is He makes all things new.
My wife, Kendall, was working with this man who really wasn't in a great place. Someone who was dealing with some substance issues. His marriage was on the rocks. And I remember my wife had been talking to our life group about this guy at work, and we'd just be praying for him, lifting him up and saying, "Hey, let's hope that we can engage this man on a different level, and let's hope that maybe this Easter he'll come to the amphitheater and check out, Rock Harbor Easter services." He didn't tell Kendall that he was going to come, but apparently he did come. And that next Monday, he just told Kendall, "I accepted Jesus, and I'm following him now."
When I think about someone saying yes to Jesus from our campus, there's one that pops to mind immediately, and it's a girl who was actually a coworker of mine. She was wanting to get involved in church. She had grown up Muslim and was just, kind of doing the thing and kind of bouncing through life. And then Janet and I had her over for dinner one night, and as we were talking, she said, I want to follow Jesus.
We know that God saves us exactly the way we are, but then He also loves us enough to walk with us and make us more like Him. And I've seen our church just rally around people wherever they're at.
It was on a Sunday morning. I was actually in the prayer room waiting to pray for people. I was the only one available, and I remember this couple had walked in. Come to find out, the teacher that day, he said from up front, he's like, "Hey, I believe someone is here that has had a miscarriage in the last couple months, and the Lord wants you to go get prayer." As they were sharing their heart of this experience, of this trial of a miscarriage and all the pain that they were going through and just the hurt and all the questions, I was able to sit there and listen and to be able to tell them, I know exactly how you feel. And as my wife and I experienced a miscarriage, and from that moment, it just connected our families. And they joined our life group at that time. And what was cool, right around that, we had found out that we had just gotten pregnant with our second child, and they got pregnant with their first.
God takes broken people and He puts Himself on display, His glory and His goodness.
This message is for everyone, and that it doesn't matter where you were last week or even last year, that there's a living God who wants to encounter you in the here and now and show you that you have been called as a son or a daughter.
That just speaks to who He is, that He is good, that He is faithful. I've seen that in my own life, in my wife's life.
To think that I could come in to the church at Rock Harbor 19 years before as the last person on earth that somebody thought would become a Christian and be invited to be an elder almost 18 or 19 years later speaks directly to the transformational power of Jesus Christ.
There's no way I should be in this chair talking about my journey at Rock Harbor. There's no way I should be an elder. There's no way I should have been able to lead people. There's no way I should be able to talk to people. What qualifies me other than His goodness?
God's goodness is on display every time I sit with someone, honestly.